Mas Oyama fought live bulls with his bare hands. He disappeared into the mountains to train for years at a time. He invented the 100-man Kumite and founded Kyokushin Karate. He's often called the most dangerous man in karate history, but how much of this legend is actually true? In this video, we're digging into the myths, the records and the stories surrounding Mas Oyama, and by the end, you'll be able to decide for yourself if the legend really lives up to the reality. Masutatsu Oyama was born Choi Young-i in Japanese-occupied Korea in 1923. Then as a child, he was sent to live with relatives in Manchuria, where it was relatively safer. Here, it is said he trained in Chinese Kempo under a local teacher named Lee. Oyama writes that he mastered the 18 hands of Kempo, but there are no surviving records, certifications, or technical references beyond his own accounts. What is verifiable, however, is his later training in Japan. While studying at Waseda University in Tokyo, Oyama trained Shotokan Karate under Gichin Funakoshi and later turned to Goju Ryu Karate under the legendary master Gogen Yamaguchi. Oyama also trained in Judo and is said to have reached a 4th degree black belt in just a few years, a claim that's questionable given how rare fast promotion would have been in post-World War II Japan. Around this time, Oyama also described himself roaming the streets like a vigilante. On a nightly basis, he would fight American soldiers and military police who were abusing their power in the streets of Tokyo. However, there are no police records, witnesses or surviving documents that mention any of this taking place. Most likely, Oyama did engage in violent confrontations, but these experiences were later shaped and exaggerated into a more dramatic personal story. One of Mas Oyama's most enduring tales is that of his intense mountain training. Inspired by the legendary swordsman Musashi Miyamoto, who trained in isolation on Mount Minobu, Oyama travelled there himself, intending to stay and train in the wilderness for 3 years. He even shaved off his hair and eyebrows to prevent himself from returning to society too soon. Rather than lasting for 3 whole years, which is the story we're often told, Oyama himself described this being broken into 2 separate periods of mountain training. The first lasted around 14 months and came to an end only when his food sponsor stopped supporting him. A second period supposedly followed his return to civilization, where he claimed to have briefly re-entered society to win the 1947 Japanese martial arts championships. But this would have been impossible, as combat sports were completely banned under the American occupation at the time. While Oyama did spend some long periods in isolation training, the total amount of time he spent in the wilderness was far less than the legend usually says. What is well documented, however, is the nature of the training itself, striking rocks and trees, meditating under ice-cold waterfalls for hours, and running for miles barefoot in the forest. And this type of training is something that Kyokushin practitioners regularly emulate today. So the conclusion is clear. The training really happened, and it was intense, but the timeline simply grew with each retelling of the story. From Oyama's isolation and frustration, he began to develop his training into a cohesive system. Kyokushin emerged from his dissatisfaction with current karate practices and his belief that techniques, physical and mental strength needed to be put to the test. Referring to his early training, Oyama said, "It's not karate. What Funakoshi taught me was etiquette and exercise." He later described Funakoshi as soft and gentle, good for teaching karate to little children like he did in Okinawa. Oyama's approach was brutally different. It emphasized heavy condition, full contact training, and extreme endurance. He named the style Kyokushin, meaning the ultimate truth, the name itself being as much of a philosophical statement as a technical one. And Oyama documented his style of karate in a number of books, the most well known being This is Karate, which I have linked below because it is well worth reading. And only after formalizing this approach to martial arts, Oyama began testing, demonstrating, and promoting the style. The most famous demonstrations of Kyokushin came from Mas Oyama taking on live bulls with his bare hands. There are many photographs and films confirming these events happened, and they were genuinely dangerous. Oyama allegedly took on 52 bulls over the course of his career and was seriously injured at least once, but he became famous for a certain approach, using a single strike to snap a horn from the charging bull, earning Oyama the nickname God Hand. But much of the footage of this happening cuts right before the moment of impact and then picks back up with the horn of the bull already on the floor, and later accounts from his students themselves suggest that the horns were sometimes cut or weakened beforehand. It is also clear in several of the videos the bulls that he are fighting are juveniles and not the charging adult males that the story leads us to believe. Furthermore, in most of the footage we see Oyama grappling with the bulls rather than striking them. To be honest, this is impressive enough on its own. Trying to wrestle a bull, even a juvenile one, and managing to throw it or pin it to the ground is an insane feat of strength. So overall, these demonstrations were incredibly risky, but still utterly remarkable, even if they have been exaggerated over time. Oyama's legend also includes claims of hundreds of challenge matches. For example, during his American tour in the 1950s, it was claimed he had a fight record of 270-0, which would have made him one of the greatest fighters of all time. While we know for a fact that Oyama certainly did have a lot of challenge matches and competitive fights, this record is inaccurate. Oyama stated himself that only a part of them were actual challenge matches and many more were simply demonstrations. His most enduring claim, however, is of the 100-man Kumite, which involved fighting 100 opponents consecutively over a number of days. Unlike many of his other legends, this is a lot more plausible. While there are no photos or videos documenting it, the challenge was later institutionalized by Kyokushin Karate, and dozens of fighters have since completed it themselves, proving that it is entirely possible. And in fact, scaled down versions of this competition are often part of high-ranking belt examinations. Whether the legends surrounding Mas Oyama are fully true, partially true, or even a little true, many of them are still undeniably impressive. They help to promote Kyokushin. They have inspired generations of fighters and shaped the martial arts reputation for mental and physical toughness. And this was of course something that Mas Oyama was not short on. However, belief should not replace analysis. Oyama was a huge personality, a prolific author, and a showman who naturally captured attention wherever he went. So while he may not have lived the legend exactly as it's told, his power, strength of will, determination and focus were all very real. If you'd like to explore more martial arts legends, subscribe to the channel or check out this video next. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Until next time, train hard, stay safe, thanks for watching.